Welcome to the girls. Today we're actually on location finally after all of the COVID. We are out and about throughout Hazleton, and today our stop is at a very important stop. We are at a place where a lot of people avoid this particular topic, but we are here today with Melissa Moran-Berlitz, Joseph Moran, and we are at the Joseph A. Moran Funeral Parlor located on 12th Street in Hazleton. And we're here today because we have so many questions for you about the topic that everybody avoids, which you are the experts at. You have been here for so long, Joe. Thank you for having us.
Oh, pleasure.
Melissa, you are what, third generation?
Yes, correct.
Third
Yes.
generation. So where did everything start? Who was the creator of the Moran Funeral Home?
Called the founder.
The founder.
Yes, it was my grandfather. His name was also Joseph. Joseph Anthony Moran. He started the business in 1939.
Wow, so 83 years later.
Correct, and we're actually one of the younger funeral homes in the area, but he started in 1939, and we are the third generation now. I'm the third generation.
Was it in this location?
Correct.
Oh,
Yes.
wow, so we're in the same location too. So you were born and raised here, Joe,
Yes, I was.
in this house.
We have this apartment in the back, the front part of the funeral home, and I lived above it for quite a few years, and I still do. I still live. She was raised there, all the family, a lot of memories. Upstairs though.
So when your dad had the funeral parlor here, was it something that you were drawn to, or was it something that you were like, I don't think I want to do that?
It was actually just part of our daily routine, and we'd walk by, you'd see people, and you'd come into wakes, you'd have to go run, they'd tell you to go run the sweeper, there was a body there. You thought everybody had one in their parlor. You didn't realize that it was anything special.
Exactly. So you were so immune to it because of having it, you being exposed to it. And Melissa, I guess the same was true for you.
Correct, yes. Though I have an older sister who wanted nothing to do with the funeral business, I knew right from, probably, I'd say maybe junior high, that this was what I wanted to do. I just knew this was my calling.
So how was that growing up for you, Missy? Melissa, but you're Missy to us. And how was that for you growing up and your friends coming over and all that kind of thing?
So a lot of my friends would not come to my house. We would not have sleepovers here because they were afraid. Though our funeral home is a little bit different, that you do not have to walk through the funeral home to get to our house. It is two separate kind of pieces, of buildings. So you're not, there are some funeral homes where you have to actually walk through the funeral home to get to the living space. Ours is not like that. So they didn't actually have to see anything if they didn't want to. But a lot of my friends were uncomfortable knowing that there was a deceased in our basement. So they would not show up. But my close friends, I guess they just kind of got used to it and were like, yeah, this is normal for her. So it was a little bit different, a little interesting.
You never had a Halloweener?
No, never.
In all these years, there's nobody
Never.
ever knocked on the door for a Halloween.
Never. Not one.
Not one.
Now, if I lived nearby, I would have, because I lived more towards 4th Street, and there was a funeral parlor over there as a kid when I was growing up, and I had no fear of the dead, ever. I don't know why. I guess it was just never a problem for me. So maybe it was the connection too, because it was your father who came here from Italy, and he sponsored my grandfather to come from Italy. And so if it wasn't for your dad, we wouldn't even be here. Yeah, isn't that something like we're connected with the Marquez?
Yeah.
So yeah, we have a great connection, and I remember Missy, for a birthday, I don't know if it was for your sister or for you, and there was a birthday party here, and of course, being friends, Sammy and Janine were invited, and there was pictures, which we'll show you the picture of the kids here at the party. Was it upstairs? On the rooftop.
Correct. So we have this floor, and then we have a living space above that, and then another living space above that, and there was a deck on that, and we had a clown, I think it was a clown if I'm not mistaken, but yeah, I was just pulling the pictures out the other day for that, but me and my sister used to share a birthday party, because our birthdays are only about 10 days apart, so we would share a birthday party, so it's probably for the both of us, but yeah, they both are here, yeah.
So I guess the business has changed a lot from when you first started with your dad, right, Joe?
Oh, so it's 100%. When I first started, when I was little, I could remember taking equipment to people's houses because they were laid out in the house. My father actually would embalm, when he first started, they'd embalm the people in the house, dress them, put them out for viewings, and then the only time they'd leave was the day of the funeral to take them to like church for a mass. And so from then it evolved into having 2-night viewings. Then now then it went to 1-night viewing. Now it's the morning of. There's cremation. There's so many options, and you could explain a little bit more about that.
Correct. When my grandfather, they would have viewings for all day. It was just they would have like an open door policy. Obviously, that has changed now, and now we set the hours usually to 2 to 3, and it's usually one time a day, or like you said, just the morning of. And then, of course, we have other options as cremation, and things have definitely changed. They are totally different than when my grandfather was in business.
And it's going around full circle. When we first started, you didn't need a funeral home because everything was done in somebody's house. And then later on, because there's so many night viewings, you needed a giant funeral home because sometimes you had to split it up. Now it's getting back to we don't need the funeral home as much because we don't use it as much as we used to years ago.
Now, was that due to COVID? Did everything change after the pandemic, or?
No, we saw the trend happening before COVID. People, they always want to make things easier. And also, people aren't able to get time off like they used to. Like years ago, when you'd have a funeral, you'd have cousins and friends, and people were able to take off work. Well, they can't do that as much anymore. It's harder to take off work, so they try to make it as easy as possible for you. So they usually try to do it all in one day. So we did see that trend before COVID. Of course, COVID really changed our business for many, many months, up almost to about a year. Things kind of settled back down, and we are back to semi-normal, to more of what we were used to, but the trend is definitely less of time frame for when it comes to viewings. They try to condense it into usually just one day.
So, Missy, when you are talking with a family to make those decisions, I imagine it's difficult because they're grieving at the time, and you're trying to, you almost counsel a family as well, because I know I've had the opportunity to work with you with loved ones, and you'd really take us from point A to point B. But is there something that you could do, like that a loved one can do ahead of time to ease the individual's, all the preparation while you're mourning?
So are you talking about what the loved one can do before?
Yes.
Correct. Okay.
Like to pre-plan something.
Yes, that is a phenomenal topic. Pre-planning is something that we encourage as funeral directors because of the fact that it really alleviates stress and burden on the family upon their passing. There's many options you can go with when it comes to pre-planning. You don't have to prepay for anything. It doesn't. So when you come to us to pre-plan, it doesn't cost you anything. We don't charge you anything for it, and you can just come to us, sit down, and just tell us what you want. And what we ask you to be prepared is kind of think about before you come to us what you'd like service-wise. Are you thinking of full burial? Are you thinking of cremation? What kind of services are you thinking of? Of course, we're going to ask you many questions. The normal, like name, address, date of birth, mom and dad's names, those kind of things, so we can get an information sheet on you. And again, that will help when your family, when they're in grieving. It's hard to remember. I mean, you think now like, oh, of course, mom's date of birth, but when you're grieving, that's a hard thing to think about. So to have all that information ahead of time for us is a wonderful, wonderful idea. And then again, just what you want. Then this way, upon your passing, your family isn't, I don't know what mom wanted. I don't know, did she want a burial? Did she want cremation? It's already laid out. Also, it's not set in stone. So if the loved one comes back to us a year later and says, I want to change everything, you can do that. You can come to me again and say, Missy, you know what? I don't want that. I want this now. I'll rewrite everything down. We can change anything. So nothing is set in stone. So you don't actually have to prepay for anything if you don't want to. Now you can if you want to. We do offer services that you can prepay, but it's not required. If you have your own insurances, if you have your own life insurances, you can use those to pay for the funeral. You can have your family be the beneficiary and they would make claim upon your passing, or you can bring them to us and we can help you kind of change the beneficiary on those. You can change it to the funeral home if you choose. Again, it is not a requirement.
How soon should somebody plan? That gives me the chills, because how soon should you plan? You never know when you're going to die, right? Most of us don't.
We don't. And now the deaths are all ages. I mean, we see from young to old. That is a real personal decision. Some people do not like talking about it. They just don't. I don't want to talk about it. I mean, I even had people in their 80s and 90s. I don't want to talk about it. Then I have people in their 30s. This is what I want. This is what I want when I pass. So it's a personal decision on that, is when you feel comfortable. You have to feel comfortable. I try to make it as light as possible. It's not a heavy conversation. We keep things light. We're not dwelling on the death so much. We're dwelling on what you like. So we try to keep it as light as possible, that we're not so heavy.
All right, well, we're going to stop right there. We'll take a quick commercial. Make sure to please patronize all of our sponsors who bring these wonderful shows to you. You'll see all the advertisers in between on our commercials. All of the people in the Hazleton area, thank you for watching, and stay right there. We'll be right back. Welcome back to the girls. We're here at the Joseph A. Moran Funeral Home. We're with Joe and also his daughter, Melissa, and they're talking about how to plan a funeral, pre-plan, how to help out your family, maybe take them through the grieving process a little easier by having some pre-plans. And now we're going to ask you some other questions about what happens when someone passes away in your family. What is the first thing you should do? If it's in a hospital, does the hospital contact someone? Do they ask you, like, all of a sudden there's all this commotion because you're grieving that you lost someone? So it's like, what happens? Who does this?
So that is one thing that we've had issues with, is our local hospital and Cedar Crest does not call us. The family has to call us. Usually nursing homes, they kind of give you they'll give you the choice. Do you want us to call, or do you want to call the funeral director? Of course, if they pass away in the house, of course, they do have to call us. So it depends on where you pass. But what I always say is, if somebody passes and you think that I have been called and you haven't heard from me, please call me immediately. That means that I was not notified, because there has been many times when time has gone on.
You mentioned about passing away in a house. When you pass away in a house, do the police automatically come? So
it depends on if you have a hospice nurse on call. If you've been in hospice care, then the hospice will explain all this to you. But if you pass away in hospice care, the hospice nurse will come and then they will call us. If they have not been on hospice care and they just pass, then you need to call 911. And then the police come, the ambulances, and then the coroner will come, and then the coroner will call us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit different than it was years ago.
So a lot of people don't even have an idea in their mind of who they're going to call. Your family has been 24-hour call. I know we've had the unfortunate use for the past 4 years of like 7 or 8 times, and I could just tell you, you've been very comforting, very accommodating. There was nothing that you didn't do for us. There was nothing that we had to think of. It was just like we called you and you were in charge. So what is the first thing then that you do after you do remove the body? How do you take this family now through this process?
So what we try to do, again, usually if a facility calls us, I will call the family immediately just to let them know that I am aware and that what the next step will be. I try to keep the families as informed as possible so they know what's going on, so they aren't confused or where is my loved one now. I want them to be aware every step of the process. So that I will call them. What we usually do is we usually go immediately. Wherever they pass, we will go, as long as the facility is ready for us and they give us the okay, we will go to the facility, bring your loved one back to our facility. And then at that point, we start to set up getting together. We need to sit down, we need to chat. Like I said before about prearranging, that's when I'm going to start asking all those questions: name, address, date of birth, where they're born, mother and father's names. I'm going to ask you a bunch of questions. Most of those questions are for the death certificate, and then of course to start the obituary if you choose to have an obituary in the paper.
And the social security number.
Yes, yes.
You better know where that is.
Correct.
Because what's the social security number for your loved one?
Correct. Yeah, that's a lot of people know most of the information, but a lot of them get stuck on when I say, don't forget, I need their social security number. But again, I will explain that when I talk to you. I'll say, this is the items I will need. If you're having an open casket viewing, we do ask for some clothes. We also ask for a picture, if you want to put a picture in the paper, but also for a woman for their hair. We like to have a picture. And then we just sit down and we chat and we kind of go over, again, what kind of services was your loved one thinking about? Burial, cremation, did you want a mass? Did you want services in the funeral home? Lots and lots of questions. So these are all things that if they are prearranged, I wouldn't have to ask.
What are some do's and don'ts for those who are grieving for the family and grieving for the loved one that passed away?
So our biggest thing is what we've had families tell us over the course of the years. When people come in and they hand you usually like a mass card or something to that effect, they don't put their addresses on. So the families are always calling us, asking us, well, how do I find that loved one's, that person's address? So that's one thing I would ask of people when they come in, put your address somewhere on the card, just so the family, if they do want to send you a thank you note, it's easy for them to find you. Second thing would be when it comes to food. People, when somebody passes, everybody's so very gracious and they want to order lots and lots of food, and people are just, they have all this food and they don't know what to do with it. But then after about a week or two, people kind of go back to their normal routines, but the person that lost their loved one is kind of now, still in the grieving process. That's when I would say, send them something. Wait about 2 weeks. Give them a gift card to something to eat, or order a meal for them. This way they have a meal, they don't have to worry about cooking. Those would be my little kind of do's, for families that are, grieving. Mm-hmm.
Missy, when you're working with the family and you really take them from start to from A to B, so you're going the whole gamut with folks, and I know you even check on folks even after. But one of the things that always interests me, because I work with a lot of veterans, when you're looking at the benefits, because there is some veteran benefits, not a lot of people have that documentation. If a father passes away, I know there's discharge papers and different things that you need. Can you explain a little bit about that so that people do get the benefits that are owed to that person?
Absolutely. So veterans, sadly, they don't, of course, they should be entitled to more benefits, but they do have some benefits. Every veteran is entitled to a flag. It's the big flags that are kind of, they're kind of folded into that triangle. So every veteran is entitled to a flag. If they are being buried, every veteran is also entitled to a marker for the cemetery. Every veteran can be buried in Indiantown Gap. Not Arlington. Arlington, there's certain requirements, but Indiantown Gap, any veteran and their spouse and disabled child can be buried free of charge. They will bury the veteran and then they will give them their marker for free, the veteran and their spouse. Our Luzerne County, if the veteran served, you don't have to actually be overseas or anything in the war, but if they served during wartime, Luzerne County will also give our veterans $100 towards the funeral. But I only know of Luzerne County because that's the county that we are in. I don't know if other counties do that as well, but I know Luzerne County does give every veteran that served during wartime. There's certain dates they have to be in. But to get any of those benefits, you have to have the discharge papers. Usually they're called DD-214. Every veteran has them. If you cannot find them, there is a way online to get them. You have to, it does take a while, but you have to order them. Also, the veterans, if they do want military services for the funeral, they're also entitled to that as well. We do have a couple local organizations that will provide some military, the funeral, usually the bugler. Sometimes they will fold the flag, and if they get enough gentlemen, they will do the gun salute. So they're also entitled to those items as well. But again, we do need, that's one thing that we're going to ask you for if you are a veteran. We'll ask your family for the discharge papers. We do need them to do any of those items.
They have other things as well. Different organizations will be, maybe the person belonged to the Elks Club or
Correct.
to fire departments or whatever.
Correct.
And
Oh, yes.
there again, the family will ask, well, do you call them or do we call them? And how are they notified? Is it discussed at the time of the planning?
Correct. Sometimes the family wants us to call, and we have no problem doing that. A lot of times the families, because they were members, they know somebody in the organization. They're like, oh, I know, so-and-so, and I could call them and I can see if, so sometimes, it depends. It depends on the family, and it depends on how close they are with the organization. But we will gladly do anything you ask us. If you ask us to call, we will definitely call for you. That's not a problem.
Here's a question for you. Are more people getting cremated, or are more people still having like the open casket for their funerals?
The trend is going towards cremation, of course, but we still see a lot. We can still do open casket viewings and a cremation afterwards. So we still see a lot of that. Of course, the cremation, like I said, is trending right now. That's definitely getting more popular. But with cremation, there are so many different options that you can have. You can still have a visitation in the funeral home and just put the urn out. Instead of actually having a casket, you can still go to church. The Catholic religion does allow us to bring the cremains into church and still have a Mass of Christian burial. People are still burying the cremains. So there's a lot of options that you can go with, but yes, the trend is definitely more towards that now.
Very nice.
Now, when you're talking about the planning, when the family does come here to do the planning of that, do you have everything in-house? Like, do they pick the coffin if they have no arrangement space? There's a coffin, if I remember, there's a vault, has
Correct.
to be for the government regulations, and also there's a vault even if you're cremated.
As of right now, no, there's only a couple cemeteries that require a vault for the urn. Not every cemetery does, but for a casket, every local cemetery except the Jewish cemeteries, they do require a vault, and we do one vault per casket. There's some cemeteries in New York, New Jersey that have like family vaults where they put multiple caskets in one big vault. We're not like that. We are one vault per casket, and that's a cemetery requirement. But as with the urns, some cemeteries do, some cemeteries don't. We do offer them if they choose to put the urn in a vault. We do have them available. But yes, everything is here. So if you come here, everything is here. You can pick and choose anything that you like.
Well, we could go on talking about this, so if you didn't think there was anything to talk about, I think it might be a good time to sit down with your loved ones or sit down and think about what you would like and do some pre-planning as well. There's even financially pre-planning. If you have a loved one that is going to have some money that you would like to save from that being inherited, you could put it here. If you have any questions at all, you could call Joseph or Melissa here at the Moran Funeral Home in Hazleton, and I'm sure they'll be more than happy to help you with any of your questions. And I hope that you have a very healthy and happy day. Thanks for watching.